story of Elijah Meadows. The people who remembered Elijah Rowan Meadows never agreed on where he came from, only where he stayed. Red Oak Ridge Road, in the Bear Wallow community just south of the West Virginia line, was where his name took root and refused to be moved. He came there in the early 1870s after the war had finally gone quiet, carrying little more than a bedroll, a handmade longbow, and a silence that clung to him like smoke that never fully cleared. Elijah had been a Confederate soldier, though he never spoke of it. The war lived in him in quieter ways, in how he slept light and woke fast, in how sudden sounds made his jaw set tight, in how he trusted trees and stone more than men. He chose a place where red oaks grew thick and close together and built his cabin low to the ground, tucked against the slope so the wind would pass over it instead of through it. He cut every log himself, notched them careful, sealed the gaps with clay and moss, and split his own roof shakes. From a distance, the cabin looked like it belonged there, as if the mountain had decided to grow a house. He lived by the rhythm of the land. Spring meant trout pulled from cold creeks and greens dug from damp soil. Summer brought berries, rabbits, and long days spent moving the ridges above Jewel Valley. Fall was for deer and smokehouses, and winter was for traps, quiet, and patience. Black bears wandered the hollows, heavy and curious. Mountain lions slipped through the timber so quietly they seemed imagined. Elijah learned to read their signs the way other men read books. Once, during a hard autumn rain, he followed a wounded buck into a limestone cave, grateful for shelter, until he stepped inside and heard a dry, buzzing echo off the stone. Rattlesnakes filled the dark, layered and coiled, their warning shaking the air. Elijah froze, then moved backward inch by inch, breath held, heart hammering. When he reached daylight again, he sat in the rain and laughed, the sound rough and surprised, like it had been buried in him for years. As time passed, coal camps crept into the valleys. Jewel Valley stirred first, cabins thrown together, smoke hanging low, men digging black rock from the mountain like they were pulling something stubborn and angry from the earth. Later, the camp in the town of Jewel Ridge grew louder and busier, drawing men from everywhere. Elijah watched it all from a distance. He traded hides, ginseng, and pelts for salt, flour, and iron, but he never lingered. Too many men in one place still felt too much like marching. It was during one of those brief trading trips that Elijah met a woman who stayed longer than she intended. She helped him through a winter, shared his cabin and his quiet, then moved on when spring returned. What she left behind was not a memory, but a life. Elijah was already well into middle age when his son was born. He named the boy Archibald Meadows, a solid name, one that sounded like it could endure. Archibald grew up under the trees and along the creeks, learning the language of the woods before he ever learned to read. Elijah taught him which tracks meant danger, which meant food, how to tell weather by smell and sound, how to listen for the difference between wind and something watching. The boy learned early that the mountains were honest but unforgiving, that they remembered every mistake. There was a bear that haunted Elijah's memory and quietly shaped those lessons. Years earlier, near a stand of chestnut, he had surprised a large black bear. Hungry and cornered, it charged. Elijah loosed an arrow from his bow, striking the animal near the eye. The bear fled, wounded but alive, and Elijah never forgot the sight of it, disappearing into the trees, one eye ruined, carrying pain and memory with it. Decades passed. Archibald grew tall and strong, then eventually left the ridge, drawn toward work and people in a way his father never had been. Elijah aged slowly, hair turning white, hands stiff but steady. He still walked the ridges, still set traps, still spoke more to the land than to anyone else. One late autumn evening, long after most men would have laid down their tools, Elijah followed a familiar path through Bear Wallow. The woods were quiet in a way that felt like someone hit the mute button. When the bear stepped out, massive and scarred, Elijah knew it instantly. The ruined eye told the story before memory did. Time collapsed. The bow was old, his arm slower, the distance wrong. The bear charged. They found Elijah Meadows the next day, the mountains finally claiming what they had loaned him for so long. The bear was never seen again, but people said something had been settled in those woods. Archibald returned to bury his father on a rise overlooking Red Oak Ridge Road. He stood there a long time, listening to the wind move through the trees his father had trusted more than words. And even now, when the air goes still in Bear Wallow, some swear they hear an old man's footsteps on the ridge, steady and unafraid, walking home through land that remembers him.